The majority of people are good people with good intentions. Most of us don't get up in the morning thinking, today I want to make as many people miserable as I can. Still, we may end up saying or doing things that make someone else feel inadequate or like they don't belong to the group or community or like they're a second-class citizen. Whenever we do that, it's called a subtle act of exclusion. In this video, I will explain everything you need to know about subtle acts of exclusion so that you can make the world a better place. So stay tuned. Hey everyone, welcome to Becoming an Expert at Self-Leadership. I'm Maika, I'm a psychologist, and really happy to see you here listening to this really important topic. I thought it would be best to start this out with some examples of subtle acts of exclusion, so here it goes. A black man enters an elevator and the person inside of the elevator clutches their bag or purse more tightly. At a meeting, everyone looks at the woman in the room when discussing who will write the protocol. Someone with different physical features or skin tone than the majority in their country gets asked, "So, where are you really from?" A black woman walks by and someone reaches out to touch her hair. A young person is told that they look cute in their professional clothes. A person in a wheelchair gets complimented for lifting a glass of water to their mouth. A person with a hearing impairment gets offered a menu in Braille at a restaurant. Someone from the LGBTQ+ community is asked whether they are the man or the woman in their relationship. A woman's contribution at a meeting is overheard or she's cut off mid-sentence. A person with an accent or dialect gets complimented effusively for having a really simple good idea. What all of these subtle acts of exclusion have in common is that they make a person feel like they're inadequate, invisible, not normal, a threat, a burden, not part of the group, or not an individual. In other words, they're not made to feel like they're enough, like they belong, like all they have to do is be themselves, and they'll be respected, seen, and valued for that. And with some of these examples, someone may ask, so what? What's the big deal? What's the big deal if someone gets interrupted or asked where they're from? That happens to everyone sometimes. But the thing about subtle acts of exclusion is that they reveal an underlying assumption that's wrong, excluding, or devaluing, like you don't really belong here, or it's unlikely that you will have something to say that is of any consequence. Also, subtle acts of exclusion happen most commonly to certain groups of people that are marginalized in society. So the burden of subtle acts of exclusion is an accumulated burden. A single instance of a subtle act of exclusion may not be that big of a deal, but the frequency with which some people experience subtle acts of exclusion is what creates the painful burden. Imagine you couldn't go through an ordinary day without being treated like a curiosity or second-class citizen in some way. And I think most of you watching this don't have to imagine what that's like. The subtle acts of exclusion experts Tiffany Jana and Michael Baran say that we've all experienced subtle acts of exclusion at some point in our life. And we've also all done things that were a subtle act of exclusion to another person. That doesn't mean we're bad people, it just means that we're human. Committing a subtle act of exclusion doesn't automatically mean that someone is racist, sexist, homophobe, or against people with a background of immigration. Most commonly, subtle acts of exclusion don't come from an intentional or conscious mindset of degradation or exclusion. They come from our unconscious biases. An unconscious bias is something that we believe, think, or expect about a group without being too aware of it, that's not true. Unconscious bias starts developing in childhood and continues to evolve throughout adulthood. Whenever we come in contact with a message about what is expected of a certain group of people or what they're like, and we don't question that message, either because we're too young or we don't notice that it's happening, that feeds our unconscious bias. And this doesn't only happen in moments when something is said about a group of people, but also when we see how they're being treated by our role models and larger society. This is completely natural and human. Everyone has unconscious biases. Also, people from marginalized groups themselves. This is just the way the brain works. It categorizes people and events and forms stereotypes and scripts. It helps the brain save energy when processing. But it becomes a problem when what we expect about another person is wrong and our expectation influences our behavior outside of our awareness, and when our behavior causes some sort of emotional pain or disadvantage to the other person. And what we can all do is be more mindful and aware of subtle acts of exclusion so that they happen less frequently. It helps to ask yourself, could what I want to say or do make this person feel in any way like they're inadequate, invisible, not normal, a threat, a burden, not part of the group, or not an individual? And ask yourself, what can I say or do that will make this person feel respected, valued, included, and seen as an individual? Some of the most intense pain a human can experience is the pain of being excluded. We are deeply social creatures. It's very much at our core. We want to belong, we want to be accepted and included. Just think back to the last time that you started a new job, went to a new place, or somehow entered a new situation. It's very likely that the biggest question on your mind was, what will the other people be like? And will I be part of the group? This desire to belong is universal. We all have it. And the kindest, most empathetic thing you can do for someone else is to extend a sense of belonging to them. You can do that by sitting with the new person at lunch or asking them if they want to join your group. You can mentor, sponsor, or in any way further the growth of someone from a marginalized group. You can address subtle acts of exclusion when you see them happening. And I don't mean an aggressive calling out. What I mean is more of a gentle addressing of something that you've noticed. And you can also address it in your own behavior. Like, wait a minute. I just spoke from unconscious bias. When I said he, I assumed that your boss is male, but maybe that's not accurate. I'd love to see a world in which we stop excluding, devaluing, and hurting each other based on demographics. I'd love to see a world in which we're aware of the voices of unconscious biases in our minds and in which we switch into a mindset of curiosity and learning about an individual. I'd love to see a world in which we look out for one another, not only in the sense of our survival needs, but also for each other's emotional needs, like the need to belong and the need to feel worthy and valuable. Maybe we can continue our learning process in the comment section. If you're up for it, let us know what your experiences with subtle acts of exclusion have been like. If you want to read more about this, Tiffany John and Michael Baron have written a really great book about subtle acts of exclusion. I'll put all the details to that in the description. There you will also find links to my newsletter and online courses. If you're new here and you want to continue learning about self-leadership, remember to subscribe and join our family. Till next time, take care. And remember, anyone you meet wants to belong, and there's so much that you can do to help them feel and be included.